Hi, I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today, we're going to talk about I want kids and marriage, so she broke up with me. Headphones are on. We're dialed in. No entry music today. Thought I would just switch it up, but I haven't done a story in a long time. So I've got two stories on deck today. And this topic comes up sometimes in a breakup, right? I think that actually this is a situation where if you want kids and marriage, which it's a good thing that you want both together, and they don't, and they break up with you, it's clarity, right? It's clarity 101. You don't like it. You're upset, you're hurt, but you don't want to talk someone into kids and marriage. So we'll get into that in a moment. If you want to book a live coaching session with myself and fully unpack your breakup, go to writemac.com, WRITEMAC.com. If you want to book a live coaching session, again, writemac.com. IG, go to Coach Mac McCarthy. The Discord link is right here. And if you want to send in one of your stories to be shared on my channel and for me to unpack it the way I'm about to do this, then you would go to writemac.com also, pay a small fee. So today, like I said, it's going to be an interesting topic in the sense that people think that, a lot of times the next step in a relationship would be kids and marriage, right? And I often think this, that being in a few long-term relationships myself that were really good, one 5-year, one 8-year, that were, like I said, really good overall, obviously didn't work out, but not having kids and staying in a committed long-term relationship, I think there's something to that. And what I mean by that is that humans evolved as couples to have kids, right? I've often said before that a lot of times when people go, oh, I just want to find my purpose. I don't know what my purpose is. And I think in the beginning of time, in the days of cavemen, your purpose was your kids. And if you talk to most people that have kids, and you ask them what your purpose is or why you're doing your job or why you're working hard, a lot of times they'll say, I do everything for my kids, or I want my kids to have a better life. And so that's kind of baked in to what they're striving for and why. So if you think about when you get to a point where you find someone that's really special, you want to spend a long time with them, and the interesting thing about this story coming up, it's the man that wants kids in marriage, and a lot of times it's the woman that's pressuring the man more often than not. Not always, but in this case it was flipped. That being said, it is a next step, right? It is a next step in the relationship. And so it's not by accident that it goes something like this. People get together, then they look to have that honeymoon phase, then it's marriage, then it's kids, then it's possibly getting a house together, having a couple cars, sharing money, what have you, right? The list goes on, the list goes on. But really, if you think about it, things have changed, and there's a lot of people holding off on kids and marriage. And for good reason. I think in a lot of societies, especially America, especially a place like California, I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco, it's very expensive. And if you aren't at a certain economic level, I think it's really difficult to have kids going into it and not being sure if you could pay rent or you could support a lifestyle that involved kids. So it becomes a responsibility issue too. It really does. The second story I'm going to talk about was completely different in the sense that it's your classic case of an in-law or sister-in-law And let's just say that when you're in a relationship that's not marriage, and you're with a girlfriend of 2, 3, 4 years, or a boyfriend, what have you, if you want to call it your partner, go ahead. If you're in one of those situations, their family and friends are going to influence them or influence your relationship. And that's going to be one of those situations it's not easy to navigate, because you would hope that in a lot of cases, I think ego-wise, you think that they should put you in the relationship first. And you don't have that connection with their in-laws. You don't have that connection with not their in-laws, their family and friends. And so you see that situation and dynamic in a totally different light. So I got one on deck today. I'm going to get into the story quickly. I was hoping to get more people on deck first, but that's okay. That's okay. Let me see if I pull this up really quick. The one on deck, thanks for hanging tough. I appreciate you. So, story's coming, story's coming, story's coming. I've been wanting to write you this for a while, but you just don't like writing much, so have put it off. I divorced my wife of 12 years 2 years ago. It was tough. It was a tough divorce. She got a chunk of my income too, but it was worth it. We were miserable for years. The amount of times I hear this from people that, they've been in a long-term marriage and they stayed together for the kids, or the marriage was done for a long time, it's endless. It just really makes you think, what are you striving for in a modern day marriage now? That would be a great chapter in my book, wouldn't it? And these are people that I've talked to that come to me for breakups in relationships after their divorce. I don't get a lot of people that come to me after a divorce. I really don't. That you would think that there's a lot of people that would go after a divorce. It's absolutely crushing. A lot of people, when they get to the point, and mind you, I'm talking about the people that may come to me for a divorce situation are usually 5 years or under. But if it's been 10 years plus, I think it hurts in different ways, but people are completely ready. And what happens is their first relationship or serious relationship post-divorce actually eats them up way more than the divorce. And the reason for that, I believe, is that a lot of times people are in a marriage that is stale or on life support for a long time. And so they try to make it work. Then they get to the divorce. And then the divorce gets a little sticky, a little dirty because of assets and money. And they just want it to come to an end. And then they get in their first relationship and they meet someone that has great intimacy, that loves and cares about them, that shows them things that they haven't seen in their marriage. And so it elevates that person to a higher level of love, a higher experience. And then they think, relationships in my past, they usually go for a long period of time, and we get through lots of ups and downs. Because I was in a marriage of 10, 12, 13 years. This is how they are. Then they get into this new relationship that's the best thing that ever happened to them. And they realize that actually it's not the same relationship. Someone leaves them and they go nuts because they think to themselves, what happened? What did I do? The reality is relationships are intricate. They have some nuance to them, and your relationship with this new person wasn't going to be like the one with the past. And if you've had 12, 15, 20 years, you think you have it figured out. You don't. So he says, we were miserable for years. I started dating about 6 months after the divorce. I went on dating apps, and a friend of mine's wife, who's got a lot of friends, has attempted to fix me up multiple times. That's one of those things that's a nice alternative to dating apps. I think that's cool. That puts a little bit of pressure on you when it's a friend's wife's friends, because depending on the type of person you are, she's probably going to be biased that her friend is, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the reality is she might not be as good as a catch as her friend thinks, and it creates a bit of an entanglement there. He writes, God bless, she's a good lady, but she'd tell me her friend was gorgeous and sweet. Then I'd meet them and think, okay, that was a major stretch. She continued on, and recently it was her ex-sister-in-law that really excited me. So that's cool. She wasn't always right, but she ended up hooking you up with someone that excited you. She was also out of a divorce a year ago. I'm 35 and she's 29. Nice age difference, not too bad. What I liked about her was that she was so casual about our date, and we actually did sleep together the first night we were together. Okay, well, that's a win. And it was good. Well, it should be good. The next day, we went out for coffee and breakfast. Then from that day, we started what seemed to be a great relationship. Over the next 6 months, we were all over each other. Intimacy was exceptional. Great word, exceptional. We both had dogs. We'd walk in the park together, and her extended family really liked me. I mean, I thought we might get married and have kids down the road, and actually writing this now makes me realize that this was a turning point. I mentioned wanting to get married and have kids in the future. Her face quivered, and she said, I'll never have kids. Well, saying never is a strong word, and it's a choice. She said she couldn't have them, and she never wanted them. So right there, it's not the fact that she doesn't just not want them. She can't have them. And so it's probably something as a woman that she was a bit traumatic finding out that she wasn't having the ability to have kids. So in no way did you know that, but you touched a chord with her. And she probably doesn't want to feel guilty that she can't give that to you. She also mentioned, if that's a big deal for me, that maybe we should put the brakes on things. I said, no, it's fine. In my head, I thought, well, maybe we could adopt down the road, but we could leave that for another conversation. Adoption's a whole different ball game than having kids with someone. I know a lot of people think that's an alternative. There's a lot of twists and turns to that, and yeah, maybe for another conversation. But if she's dug in with a statement like, I never want to have kids, I don't think she's going to want adoption. Then the next couple of weeks, I just noticed her get considerably colder with me. I asked her what was wrong. She said she didn't think it was going to work because she really doesn't want kids. This was an issue for her past ex. So there you go. It's triggered two things. She can't. I think what you're missing in this is that she said she can't have kids. Now she's added in that it's resulted in a breakup before. So she looks at it. The human mind looks for similarities to past events to make new decisions. And she's basically saying, look, the writing's on the wall. You really want to have a kid. I can't even do it. So I don't think this is going to work. She also confirmed adopting was out of the question. There you go. She went on to say that even if we didn't have the kids issue, she's 29 years old and doesn't want to get married anytime soon. I don't blame her. I think she's being honest with you. People that generally come out of a marriage don't want to get into a serious relationship right away. If they do, they want it to be spontaneous, not planned. They don't want to have a lot of rules to it, and they certainly don't want to entertain marriage and kids right away. I could be wrong that there's some other people out there that would say, no, that's not true. But in a lot of cases, in my experience and talking to people in breakups, they're usually extremely gun shy to a new relationship that has marriage or kids written on the back. So in that moment, excuse me, I lost my place here. She went on to say that even if we didn't have a kids issue, that she's 29 years old and doesn't want to get married anytime soon. She likes being with me, but hasn't allowed herself to fall in love completely because at this point she doesn't believe being in love lasts. Okay, so You might be thinking like, what's her problem? Maybe I can switch her mind. She's telling you how she feels and what she thinks. I don't think you're going to be able to turn that away from her. I was taken back and told her we could slow things down a bit, but that I didn't think we should give up on what we had. She responded that she wasn't giving up. She was just being realistic. Her past relationships started good too, but she liked the idea of having her freedom. So in that moment, I got up and said, look, I got to get some space from this discussion. I went home. I shed some tears thinking, damn, how did I read this wrong? I don't think you read anything wrong. I think it's more a case of she has these feelings. You brought up the idea of kids and marriage, and she was point blank against it. And now you're thinking, I wish it was different. How can we work this out? How can we make this work? I'm not sure you can in this particular case. Because even if you said, let's slow things down, she's going to think it's in the back of your mind that you want kids and marriage and that it's going to end at some point. I'm thinking marriage and kids, and she's thinking it'll never last. Let's just break up. Well, she's not thinking it'll never last. Let's just break up. She's thinking, I won't have kids and I don't want to get married. That's where you're missing the translation here. We talked that through text. She said she was sorry, but she's just thinking long-term relationship with anyone. She's just not thinking long-term relationship with anyone right now. This floored me. I told her we could talk about it that weekend as we had plans to meet a friend of hers for dinner. So all week I was thinking, how can we make this work? Then we met up. She was very outgoing and sweet, even said she missed me, texting her all week. So going back to that, so all week I was thinking how we can make this work. Then we met up on the weekend. So she missed you. After dinner with her friend, we went to my place and made love. I say made love because it felt that way. Good for you. It was great. Then the next morning at breakfast, she seemed cold again. Well, one thing I would ask is if there was drinking involved in the dinner, because that will sway feelings. She brought up that she still felt the same, but wanted to continue seeing each other. But if kids was something that I was serious about, tell her now. I said, I thought about it, and we can worry about that later. For now, I just want to continue to see each other. She agreed. Well, what you're doing, though, is you're saying that you're saying that you're not giving up on kids or marriage. And she's pretty dug in on that. So you haven't, and to your credit, if that's something you want at 35 years old, then you need to be true to yourself. And I give her credit for being honest with you. That afternoon, we hooked up again. Then the next day, she called me and said she really couldn't do this any longer, that she just doesn't want to be in a relationship this serious and with someone who wants marriage and kids. She then told me that she thinks it's best we just don't contact each other for a while and that it will be hard, but it's the right thing to do. Again, I was speechless. I accepted it and hung up. Well, good for you for accepting it. What else are you going to do? What's the alternative? Now it's been a month of no contact for us both, and I'm thinking I don't really want kids or marriage that bad. Should I tell her that I gave up the idea, that I gave up that idea and I just want to see her now? I mean, it was our only problem. It's not a small problem. If we solve that, we can get back together. Well, you're not going to solve it because it's going to bubble up again. You're 35 years old. You want to have kids and marriage. It's something a lot of people want to have. It's sensitive to her because she can't even do it physically. Secondly, she's broken up with someone before, so she's already tasted this bitterness. And thirdly, it's pretty hard to convince someone, you know what, I changed my mind about something that's such a big deal in a relationship. So also a caveat to all this is the fact that you're giving in to something you believe in and really want just in the name of continuing a relationship, and I don't think she'll find that attractive. If we solve that, then we can get back to her. What do you think, Coach? Lay it on me. Well, I think you need to be completely honest with yourself. Do you want to have kids and get married to someone? Is that your ultimate goal? If everything went right, would that be what you really wanted? How much are you really just giving in because you're lonely? You've only been divorced, if you said 6 months after the divorce, started dating, you've only been divorced for a year and some change, it sounds like. Give yourself some credit for finding someone as quickly as you did, but also I would say this woman's not going to let go of the fact that anything that smells like you wanting marriage or kids is going to repulse her. And by the way, she mentioned, I just don't want to get married or be too serious right now. You do. And so even if you give into that now, it's going to bubble back up later on. Now, there is a possibility that you could keep seeing each other, and eventually she could change her mind. She could maybe even change her mind about adoption. But I don't see that being the case, and it's definitely not going to be the case anytime soon. And it's not going to be the case of you talking her into it. So it sounds like she has feelings for you. She cares about you, but she knows this will be a sticking issue later on. So if I were you, if you want to call her and you want to hook up and you have the ability to be casual, friends with benefits, or see each other, I think you're setting yourself up for the same thing to happen again. But I also think there's a strong possibility that if you call now 2.5 months later and she's 29 years old, she might be seeing someone else. She might be in a place where she's already decided that, because what stood out to me, it's not just the kid and marriage thing. She wants to see what it's like to be single. She's been married too. So just consider the fact that if you call her and you don't get a result you want, that you'll be back at ground zero quite quickly. And that's a consequence of calling out of no contact. That being said, the other alternative is to continue in no contact, get back out in the dating game and believe in yourself and bet on yourself to meet someone else of equal or higher value, or just someone that believes in a future with marriage and kids. And I think that's possible. So I would be really curious to hear what your friend's wife thinks also. So I got one more story to share. Coach, here's my damn breakup story. I'm bitter still, so keep that in mind. My ex left me about 2.5 months ago. I didn't see it coming. I'm 38. She's 27. It's been rose petals and wine glasses, as you say, for a couple years. Then about 6 months ago, her adopted sister rolled back into town after losing her job in another state. They immediately started going out together a lot. Well, this is very common. You're in a serious relationship. Someone's changed their friends, families, or colleagues, and it's influenced them, and it's hurt your relationship. Now, the knee-jerk reaction is to blame the friend or the sister, and that's probably one of the worst things you can do, because that's someone they're close to. They immediately start going out together a lot. I never really liked the sister, and she didn't like me. I'm an engineer, and I'm a structured and orderly person who gets shit done and handles my business. Go for you. Her sister is the opposite of that. She's just a train wreck of a woman, never has anything nice to say about anyone she encounters. When she was with my ex, they wouldn't just drink wine and gossip. They would just drink wine and gossip about other people, and especially family members they despised. Well, that's common of a lot of women. Gossiping about family members, but it's definitely not a nice feature. I'd just leave them to it. But now that the sister was back in town for good, she started to just doing pop buys, then eventually moved in with us. Well, that's a no-no. It's one thing if she's hanging out with someone that's her sister or a friend or colleague. It's another thing for them to move in with you. That's going to create a hellstorm. By the way, I wasn't really consulted. I just came home one day, and she was on the couch eating some Pringles and licking her fingers of cheese dust. That's disgusting. It was an awful sight. Sounds like it was. The fact that your girlfriend didn't consult with you is a huge red flag. That's a complete lack of respect on your end. When you live together, stuff like this needs to be talked about, and you need to have a sit down. That night, I talked to my girl, and she explained it was temporary, but it was her sister, and that she'd do it for her. In other words, her sister would do the same for her. Long story short, over the next 3 months, my life would be hell, as we had been locked down together. Oh my goodness, worst case scenario. She said no problem, and even thanked she said no problem and even thanked for letting her stay there. Then a few hours later, my ex calls me. Okay, I lost a spot here. So over the next 3 months, my life would be hell as we had to be locked down together. It was just them holding court in the kitchen with a bottle of cheap wine. This was nearly every day. I finally confronted her one day and said, look, when this lockdown ends, you need to get another place to stay. So one thing I could say is that you might have wanted to have that discussion with your girlfriend before you went to the sister. But at the same time, you could have been in just a fed up stage, right? She said no problem and even thanked she said no problem, even thanked her for letting her stay there. Then a few hours later, my ex calls me, goes off saying, what did I say to her sister? She said I intimidated her into moving out and that she just liked a week to find a hotel. I found it highly dramatic. I told my ex maybe she should move in with her. If you didn't mean that, you shouldn't have said it. She hung up on me that weekend. They moved out. I stuck to my guns. I stayed away from the house that day. They moved out, but I had enough of them. The entire week I slept well. I missed my ex a bit, but really was at peace. Then really set in and I missed her. She was such a hot piece of tail. Okay. I've dated a bit, but now I messed up as nothing compares to her. Well, if it's only been a couple months, it's not the movies. You're not going to find an immediate replacement that does what she did. Obviously, she was special in some ways, and she's a hot piece of tail in your eyes. You got to give yourself a little bit more time. So now I'm thinking of calling her and seeing how things are going and if she wants to get dinner. I feel confident she'll say yes, as we have a mutual friend that told me she said she really misses me and wants to see me, but doesn't want to get rejected if she calls. What's your take? Well, if a mutual friend is a reliable source, I would say that, yeah, what do you have to lose of calling her? Because this relationship ended because of the sister situation. Do not call her and be all over her or be needy or weak. But I would say, what are you chasing? Because the sister is still going to be a part of her life. She still was extremely flighty and disrespectful in a lot of ways. So I think even if you guys hooked up and went out again, I'm not sure if you can develop the same relationship. Just be prepared that this information you got from the friend is secondhand information, and it might not be true. So be prepared for her to not be as receptive. And by the way, I would also add that even if she has those feelings and told her friend that she might still play a little bit of hardball with you. So be prepared for that too. I would say with you, if you wanted to do a live coaching session before you called her, maybe we have some more things to unpack here. So that's one thing that I would suggest. Let's see here. So I'm going to call it a live stream now. Those were the two stories. If you want to send in your story to writemac.com, go ahead. If not, have a good one.